Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 6 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn how to do 3D animations and 3D graphics in Python. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice strong cup of black coffee. That is straight up black coffee, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. That's your go juice. Go get you some. I am also going to need you to fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code. And as you are bringing up Visual Studio Code, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your help and your encouragement and your support that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what we are going to learn today. And what I'll do is I'll kind of give you a little bit of a hint of the direction that we're going with this series of lessons. What I'd really like to do is get to the point that we are connecting an Arduino up to our Visual Python, and the Arduino might be hooked up to sensors, you know, pressure sensor, temperature sensor, distance sensor, different things like that. But rather than just taking data, I want it to pass that data to Visual Python, and then I want us to have animated 3D graphics that will change in response to what's happening with the Arduino. So if we're measuring temperature, imagine that in vpython we built a visual graphic of a thermometer, and then that thermometer changed as the temperature on the Arduino was changing. Pretty cool, yeah. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but to do that we've got to learn a little bit more about how to animate a 3D graphic, and we learned a little bit about that in the last few lessons. One way we can bring animation to a graphic is to change position, right? We had that little box, and then we had the marble in it. The marble was bouncing in the box. That came alive. That was animated, and the animation was based on moving the object. Another way that we can animate it, there's several other ways that we can animate it, but one of the ways that is very effective if we're using it in conjunction with Arduino is to animate something by changing its size. And so that's what we're going to play around with today. One of the things we'll play around with today is showing you how to bring animation to your Visual Python model by changing dimensions. So enough of this talking. Let me get out of your way and let's come over here and let's go ahead, and we are working in the vpython folder, and let's create a new file, and I'm going to call it mypiston.py. The .py is kind of important. We click enter, and then boom, we have a fresh new Python program just waiting to be written. Now we are using vpython, so we are going to want to say from vpython import everything, which is the star. And today I'm going to be introducing you to a really cool additional library which is called Numpy. And Numpy just does all kinds of incredible things, and it does them real easily. Someday I should have a whole tutorial series on Numpy, but today I'm just going to be showing you one of the things because it's what we need for making the animations run better. So we're going to say import numpy as np. Now you notice this import has a little different syntax than the one we did for vpython. Well, the thing is we're importing the entirety of Numpy, but I want to import it as np. That way if I want to interact with the library, I can say np.this or np.that, and if I just said import numpy, then I would have to say numpy.this and numpy.that. So if you said import numpy as cat, then you would do cat.this or cat.that. I hope that makes sense. So now we have our two libraries, and then if we're going to animate something, we're going to have an object to animate. So I think I will make an object called my piston, although it's really bad to create things the same as your file name. So let's see, I will call it piston 1. Okay, piston 1, and that is equal to cylinder, and then we're going to put some parameters in here. Let's say I'm going to have a radius equal to 1. Let's say I'm going to have a length equal to 3, and then I'm going to have a color equal color dot red, I think. And then let's see, I think also what I would like to do is I'd like to introduce you to another parameter that I haven't talked about before, but you know, we're just kind of learning as we're going here. Another parameter you can do is opacity. The opacity is how solid or how transparent it is. So an opacity of 1 means it's solid. An opacity of 0 means it's invisible. An opacity of 0.5 would be it's kind of halfway there and halfway transparent. So let's try that. Opacity is equal to, let's just set it to 0.5, and with that we should sort of be able to see through this piston a little bit. And then remember that we need to say while true, because when we create an object, if we don't keep the Python program running, the whole thing will die. So we'll say while true and then do nothing but pass. And so if I am right here, and I hope I haven't already made a mistake this early in the video. If I am thinking correctly, what I think is I think that this should just create a nice cylinder. So let's try this. Let's run it. Boom. Okay. We have a nice cylinder. And do you see how you can kind of see that bottom face of the cylinder? And so you actually are sort of looking through it a little bit. Let's play with that parameter a little bit just because it's new. I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but let's put like an opacity of 0.25. Kill the old one, start the new one. And boom, you can really see that that one is more transparent. Now, unfortunately here, our background is black. And so if you're making something transparent against a black background, it sort of starts getting really dark. This would look better if we had a white background, but I do not want to get sidetracked at this point with playing with the background. But let's just set it back to 0.5. But you can see that we can set opacity. We've set color, we've set length, and we have set radius. All right, so let's see if we could animate this thing. So what we're going to do here is we are going to put a for loop. So we're going to say for, and then we are going to say like my length is equal to, for my length in range, and let's just go from 1 to 6 in steps of 1. Okay. Now remember, with vpython, anytime you're changing a parameter inside of a loop, you have to put a rate in there, or you can get very unusual response. Okay, you can get an unusual response. So you always have to put a rate in there. So I'm just going to put a rate of, let's say, 5. That's pretty slow. And so it's going to start at 1. It's going to go to 6 in steps of 1. And now I'm going to bring it back down in size. So for my length in range, and what do we want to do this time? We want to go from 6 down to 1, and we want to go in steps of -1, like that. Okay. Also, remember, we have this crazy nonsense. It's not going to go actually to 6. It's going to stop at 5 because that's what the range function does. But that should be okay. Rate of 5. Now we've got to do something in these for loops. Well, what do I want to change? I want to change the piston length. So I'm going to say piston 1 dot what? I want to change its length. And then what do I want to change it to? Well, it's my length is the one that is stepping through the range, and so I want to change it to my length. And then I think we will just snag this here and then come down and put it here, and it should go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like that. It should do that. So let's give this a try and see if this thing actually works. Okay, boom, look at that. Look at that. Okay, do you see how we are animating this thing? Boom. Okay, so it goes 1 to 5 to 1 to 5. All right, so that is what our goal is to animate this. But now, if you were just looking at this and you were going to offer critique or suggestion, what would you really like? Okay, you would like it to go smoother. It's choppy. Okay, so you would like it to go smoother. So let's come back over here and see what we can do. We'll kill that. What your inclination would be is say, okay, you don't want to go in steps of 1. Let's say you make steps of 0.1, but you're going to see that there's a problem in doing that. And the problem is we are going to get an error down here. And let's see if I can make that a little bigger. You can see that the error is saying that this range 1 to 6 in steps of 0.1, float object cannot be interpreted as an integer. And so you can see that this range function wants integers. It doesn't want floats. And right here, what we have is we put in a float. So if we're going to do this, we have to go back and just make it 1 and 1, and then just live with the choppiness in our animation. But are we the kind of guys that are going to sit here and live with choppy animations? No, not on my watch. We're going to make it smooth. And we're going to make it smooth by using Numpy, because Numpy has a feature sort of like range, but the feature in Numpy does 2 things for you. Number 1, it doesn't have this nonsense of, you know, on range, if you tell it to go to 6, it stops at 5, right? With the Numpy equivalent of this, you tell it where to start, it starts there. You tell it where to stop, it stops there, not one before there, and then you tell it how many steps you want between those two, and then it figures out the step size. And so I really love that. And that is actually, we'll come here, and instead of range, let me just go all the way across here. We are going to do NP. So that's calling the Numpy library, and then np.what? It is len space. That's like linear space. Len space, and you tell it where do you want to start? You want to start at 1. Where do you want to stop? You want to stop at 6. It will go all the way to 6 exactly. It doesn't stop before there. Now the other neat thing is, how many steps do you want it to make? Well, let's say make 10 steps. So start at 1, go to 6. Make 10 steps. Okay, and then this is still my length, so I think the rest of this stuff should still be good. Let me get that out of the way. And then here we're going to do the same thing. So we'll just do this again. Okay, so we'll go np dot, what's the function? Len space. And we want to start at 6, and we want to go to 1, and we want to go in steps of 10. And we'll go at a rate of 5. All right, are we ready to try this? Here we go. Okay, and it seems to be dead. Why is it dead? Why is that thing dead? What did we do wrong here? Let's go back and find our error. Oh, it says that. You know what? I think I might have not killed the last one. So let's try it by killing it and then coming back. Sometimes if you don't kill it, you get unexpected results. And in fact, it is still dead. It is dead. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? My length, len space. Ooh. Guys, I hope you saw this. It auto-corrected. Sometimes this auto-correction really kills you. I said import numpy as np, and you see it changes it to numpy. np, and then get off of there and make sure it is not numpy. So now I interact with that as np. Okay, np. Now this should work, I hope. Boom! Look at that. Look at that. Okay, do you see how that's a little smoother? You see how that's a little smoother? Okay. What is it that you would suggest, though? You would suggest that you want it even more smooth, right? You want it even smoother because I can still see those discrete steps. So we're going to come back over here, and we are going to come over here. All right, and let me make my code view a little bit bigger for you. And so what we're going to do is, instead of 10, we're going to go 100 So we're going to take 100 steps, and so now it should be much smoother. Okay, so let's kill that, come back over here. Yeah, that is really getting much smoother. Can you see that? Much smoother. Okay, but you see how it's still a little choppy? All right, so what would you do? Tell me what you would do. Let's change it to 1,000. So let's go in 1,000 steps, and now that should be perfectly smooth. It should be smooth. All right, let's look here. Let's run it with 1,000 steps. Oh man, look how smooth that is. Okay, look how smooth that is. All right, do you see how smooth that is? But now, you guys that are always complaining, what are you going to complain? Well, I put so many steps in, now it is too slow. Well, the answer, my friend, is not to go in and make it back to 100. The answer is to make it go what? Faster. So let's see if we could go 100 instead of 5, and then it should step through those smooth transitions much quicker. So let's see what that does. We're going to kill this, and then we're going to come here, run it. Okay, that is starting to look good, right? That is starting to look good. Do you see how smooth that is? That would be a beautiful animation. That would be a beautiful animation. Now, I do think, for me, I'd like it to go a little bit faster still. And so we're going to come back over here. We're going to kill it. And then we are going to go to 50. And then we are going to go to 50. And then let's see what happens. Okay. Let's get it where we can see it. Okay, I like that. I like it a lot. I like that a lot. So you see we have a nice animation there. Really smooth. Everything about that I like. I think that's like a nice speed to be going, and it's a nice smoothness. But kind of the point here is that you can animate something by changing a parameter, and the parameter that we're changing here is we are changing the parameter of length. In these for loops, we've learned how to use Numpy linspace to make things nice. And let me just show you with this linspace how easy it is. All right, so let's say that instead of changing length, we want to change opacity. Okay, we're going to change opacity. So for that, we would say, let's say for my opacity, in linspace, and for opacity, we would want to go from 1 to 0, okay, and then we would change piston 1. We wouldn't change length, we would change opacity, right? And this dot opacity, that is the parameter up here, right? So piston 1 is the object. What parameter are we changing? Opacity. What are we changing it to? We are going to change it to my opacity, which is kind of like our for loop index. So we're going to change it to that. So you got to understand the difference between dot opacity is the parameter we're changing, and what we're changing it to is my opacity, which is this variable that we're stepping through our numbers with. So I think that should work. Let's go ahead and snag this line, and then let's come down here and put it here. Okay, and then I think I'm going to snag this line here too, because it's very close to what we want, and I'm going to put it here. And then we need to go, if we go from 1 to 0, then we're going to need to go from 0 back to 1, and then we're going to start out at a length of 3. This should look pretty cool if I'm thinking about it right. Make sure we kill that old program. Here we go. Okay, there it goes. Look at that. Goes away, comes back. Boom! Look at that. Full solid, and then it fades away, and then it comes back. So are you starting to see all the things that you can change? You can change where something is, you can change how big something is, and then you can change its opacity. Okay, let's just do maybe one more example here just to kind of get comfortable with things. And so what if I say, instead of a piston 1, what if I say my sphere, And then that would need to be, instead of a cylinder, that would need to be a sphere. And then we're going to have like a radius of 1, and a sphere doesn't have a length. Okay, so it'd be radius 1, color is color.red, opacity is still 0.5. That looks pretty good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we are going to make my radius equal lens space. Let's go from a radius of 0.1 to a radius of 1 in a steps of 1,000, and then from a radius of 1 back to a radius of 0.1. Okay, and guys, when you're changing size, again, I can't remember if I told you this before, don't set the size to 0, because if you take a 3D object and you set the size to 0, it's like you disappear it, and then sometimes it won't come back. So don't ever size something to 0, because it might be that you just evaporate it when you do that. Okay, and then this is going to again be my radius, and then we're going to say piston 1, not opacity, but radius. Why is that? Because it's this radius, right? It is the parameter radius that we're changing. Piston 1 dot what dot radius, and then what are we going to set it to? We are going to set it to my radius, which is the index that we're stepping through. Hope that makes sense. And then here we will do the same thing, radius, and then we will make it my radius, like that. So let's try that. Kill the old one, bring in the new one. Here we go. And it is dead. It is dead. It is a dead graphic. It's doing nothing. What did I do wrong here? Ooh, piston 1. Yeah. Okay, remember when I made my sphere? Right, that is now my object. So I have to make my object, my sphere, my object, my sphere, like that. Now let's try it. And it is still a dead graphic. Oh no, there it goes. Okay, I just didn't wait long enough. Look at that. Boom! Look at that. Okay, I want you to know though, that's not coming towards you and moving away. It's just getting bigger and smaller. And so you've got to not visually interpret that as the ball's coming towards you. It's just the ball is getting bigger and the ball is getting smaller. And I think if I back off a little bit, you can see it a little better as just changing size. All right, guys, that is pretty cool. So what did we learn today? We learned that if you really want to be stepping through parameters in a way that it's easy for you to control, who's your friend? Mr. NumPy.LensSpace is your friend. Okay, Mr. NP.LensSpace. And guys, you know, almost any time that I do a for loop, I go ahead and use LensSpace because I don't even have to think. This is where I want to start. This is where I want to stop, and this is how many points I want. And so I don't have to think through kind of some of the nonsense that goes on when you use that range command. And if you want to go from 1 to 10 in steps of 0.1, you would say start at 1, stop at 10, and give me 10 steps, you see. So it's this lens space will work for almost anything. Then what we saw is anything that you set a parameter for when you create the object, you can change it later on by doing whatever your object is, whatever your my object dot, then what parameter you want to change, my object dot radius, my object dot color, my object dot opacity, whatever parameter you can change in an animated way. So I've kind of shown you 3 different examples. You can move position, showed you that a few weeks ago, in the last couple of weeks I mean. Then I've showed you today how you can change the length, you can change the radius. We didn't do color, but you could probably do the color, and then you could step through the opacity as well. And so this is just a way to bring your animations to life. Now imagine in the future when we hook up to the Arduino, we might hook up to a temperature sensor, and if we hooked up to a temperature sensor, you would want a nice graphic, a nice animated graphic that looked like a thermometer. So that is what your homework assignment is for next week. Is I want you to make an animated visual that looks like a thermometer. Okay, so you're going to have a thermometer, and then you want the mercury going up and coming down and going up and coming down. And then what you can do is try to do like a screen capture and then upload your video to YouTube and then put a comment down below linking over to your animation, and let's see who comes up with the best thermometer graphic. Now, some of you OCD people are just probably going to just go crazy with the level of detail that you're going to put in. Okay, but what I want to see is I want to see how you guys are going to do your animations and see if anybody comes up with just like a really cool thermometer. But that's your homework for next week. And then next week I'll do a quick solution and then talk about some new stuff. Okay, hope you guys are having as much fun with Visual Python as I am. I really enjoy this. I have a lot of fun with it. I can't wait till we get that Arduino hooked up with it. But we got to kind of build a foundation of being able to build good graphics before we bring in the Arduino. Okay guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, make sure that you subscribe. When you do, ring that bell so you'll get notifications when my new videos come out. And then think about sharing this with other people. We need more people in the world that are coding and fewer people that are sitting around watching silly cat videos. This is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.